again, welcome to Frank's School. Still going on with the memories for today and I guess tomorrow maybe, that I found out from speaking to Peter about his childhood. The houses, most of the houses, he said, had no chimneys. It was just an open fire and the smoke had to find its way out through the roof. His had a chimney, but I think he said in the part of the village of 500 there were 4 houses that had chimneys. It was an open fire. It was in a sunken hearth. It was down, and they would sit around the fire. In my mind, it was about chair height that the fire was down. This is what he described. They cooked in cast iron pots on that same fire, and embers they took to bed. They had metal containers with holes in them that they would take the charcoal or the embers to bed to warm them when they'd first go to sleep. I assumed that their sleeping quarters were elsewhere. I'm just not sure. The roofs were of clay on straw, not tile, mostly. He gave me the impression that they would put straw like thatch, and then over the thatch they would then put clay, not fired, not tile. And that has me thinking that might have been, something like that might have been the case at Chaussee's Mill. In part of those buildings that don't seem to have any evidence of tile roofs. This open fire, I'd mentioned earlier that they smoked their meat up above the fire. It was just so smoky in those houses. He said as a young person it didn't bother him that much. Now last year when I was in Switzerland, I was at the Ballenberg Museum. I was in a building that was like that. It was so smoky that the tourists would come out coughing, and up there were maybe 200, maybe 500 sausages hanging, all being smoked. At the time I thought this can't be right. Why wouldn't they have some kind of a chimney or something to make it so the smoke didn't so much come down through? I'm not sure about that. But anyway, if they had I had understood that they would smoke their meat inside a chimney sometimes, but he seemed to think no, because it would cook then or something. I don't know. Of course, there were espingueiros, is what I learned from the book, to call them these corn cribs, is what they were. He said they were called canastros in his part of Portugal. Canastros, stone corn cribs, stone, granite. Sometimes they would be wooden. He said there aren't as many now as there were. They're kind of disappearing, but every house basically had one. There was a building specially designated for potatoes, he told me. I'm trying to remember this as well as I can. Also there was one for hay. He said hay was a very important crop because of these working cows that they had. I asked him about sewing, and no, he said there were no sewing machines. All the sewing was done with needle and thread. And he did remember threshing with a stick with a hinged end on it, smashing the grain to knock the grain off. Now that, I've seen documentaries about that. I knew about that. But he said they did that with the corn as well. Now that surprised me. Corn, like corn on the cob, dried corn. And he said, yeah, a woman would hold a bundle, lay it out on a bench, I guess, and then a man would smash it. And then what didn't come off that way, they'd take with their fingers. But see, here, I asked him if he'd ever seen one of these things you crank that just takes the kernels right off an ear of corn, and he hadn't seen that. Those are fairly old, they're antiques here, but they are cast iron, and I suppose that was newfangled. Maybe invented about 1880 or something like that, and the life that he's describing went back way further than that. All right, well, so much about the houses. I think tomorrow I'll finish up telling about what I remember from his memories of this little town of Mezio in Portugal. See you tomorrow.